Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this aspect of the agenda, our virtual media conference on the 5th edition of the Community Development Partnership Forum Team, Sport as a Driver for Sustainable Development. And just to be here, the members of the panel that will be taking your questions this morning, the Honourable Shamfa Cudjoe, Minister of Sport and Community Development, Trinidad and Tobago, Ms. Florette, Blackwood, Sport Development and Innovation Consultant in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport from Jamaica, and Mr. Denzil Wilks, Head of the Sport Development Foundation of Jamaica. I am Anthony Brusco, Senior Corporate Communication Officer at the Ministry of Sport and Community Development, and your moderator this morning. And also joining me as a co-moderator will be Mr. Kevin Garcia, Head of Corporate Communications at Sport TT. I would like the media to please indicate your name, the media house you represent before posing your questions. And please use the raise hand option when you're ready to pose your questions and indicate who you are posing your questions to. So we are ready for your questions, and I'm seeing that we have OPM Media. So OPM Media, please ask your question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Raymond Edwards. I'm a multimedia producer with the Office of the Prime Minister Communication. My question is to the Honourable Minister and perhaps to the other members of the regional forum. Now, we're speaking about using sport as a driver for community development, but this sort of activity comes at a cost. Has the minister determined what percentage of the national budget should be allocated to sport to allow this community drive, and the other regional members, have your national budgets been adjusted to allow sport to be a part of the community and the development of the community? I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. I expressed to the gathering yesterday, from the perspective of a minister of government and a member of cabinet, I can tell you everybody wants more. Yes, everybody wants more, but we have to really be mindful, open and honest, even reasonable when it comes to looking at our current economic circumstances. You will find that over the years, government has made significant investment as it relates to sport, from the building of facilities, world-class infrastructure, and maintaining them primarily or solely on the taxpayer dollar, providing support to our athletes, both elite athletes and upcoming athletes, and doing what is necessary, or doing what we can based on our financial position to provide that support to sports. As I said yesterday, everybody has a role to play, from the athlete to the national governing bodies, to government, to private sector. I was really impressed yesterday when the Jamaicans spoke about how involved the corporate Jamaica is, or should I say was, is, and continue to be in the development of sport in Jamaica, and actually financing athletes, financing programs, and so on. And of course, we would like to get to that level where we have that higher level of corporate support, more organized and structured, or should I say, more organized and structured national governing bodies with the necessary support, not just from government, but also from their parent bodies and corporate TT. So as government, we have a role to play, and significant investment has been made over the years. We continue to make significant investment, but we also have to admit that other areas have to be financed also. For instance, the social sector, right now as we face the COVID-19 pandemic, people want food support, income support, and so on. So it's about trying to strike that balance. But what I would like to see more of for Trinidad and Tobago and for the rest of the region is we spoke a lot about research and data and statistics and so on in making decisions, and we need to zoom in more, place more laser focus, making comparison like we're spending X dollars per month on let's say correctional facilities for young men before the ages of let's say 18, 20, 21. If we can find a way to reinvest that money or redirect that money towards more youth programs, more sport programs, really utilizing sport as a vehicle for crime fighting, for social cohesion, for providing opportunities, helping community groups and so on to develop sporting events in their communities, or sporting activity in their communities to create employment for the people in their community. You're seeing it happening in some communities, and yes, we do support many of the groups in doing so, but of course we'd like to see it happen at a larger scale.
Thank you, OPM. Tobago Channel 5, we are ready for your question.
All right. Hi, good morning. Clayton for Tobago Channel 5. My question is, and I just want to refer to what so many ministers said, Jamaica has been used as an example of sporting success in the region despite challenges in resources. Jamaica has been punching above its weight, so to speak, on a global level. You know, what can we take from their community involvement? Because knowing with Jamaica, the whole culture and all of that seem to be infused into their sport. What can we take away from them? And then across the region now, how is the comparison? What can we learn from some of the other islands? Though they might be lesser developed and successful in sport, but the community involvement, what can we take away from looking at other models around the Caribbean?
Okay. I want to make a point even before answering that question. Let's not forget to include the other panelists, because I gave a response to the first question, and I would like to hear from Jamaica what they're doing in that regard, if there's a set percentage or not, and how do they go about their financing from government. So hopefully I can hear that a little later. Back to your question, Clayton, I think there's so many lessons that we can learn from each other. So for instance, sports, school sports from the tender ages, that like it's done in Jamaica, you have you have early childhood education, so kindergarten, school having intercolor sports and so on, and how they run their school sport or their sport meets and so on. And there's a huge investment and huge participation from corporate Jamaica. And not just that, the alumni associations are very much deeply involved based on my understanding of what takes place there. Then in Trinidad and Tobago, as everybody's afforded different opportunities in education and so on. You heard people like Shelley and Fraser Price spoke about it yesterday, and I have friends I know, at least from Jamaica, who spoke about utilizing sport as a way to high school, as a way to getting their school books and scholarships and so on. And we must admit that in Trinidad and Tobago, that's not the same. Yeah, in Trinidad and Tobago, it's not the same culture. It's not even the same belief. You have still, Clayton, and I know that you could admit, being from Tobago, we have parents in Trinidad and Tobago who believe that sport is a hindrance to their child's academic progress. So it calls for a change in culture, in how we see sport also, and the investment that we as a community, as parents, as government, as stakeholders are willing and ready to make as it relates to sport. I would like to hear also from some of the other members of the platform, please.
Mrs. Florette?
All right,
Or
so let
Mr.
me just,
Wilks?
I don't know if I can't hear, I couldn't have heard anybody else, but I just wanted to add that there are lessons that we can teach other Caribbean islands also, because there are many islands that don't have, like, let's say, an elite athlete funding program where athletes really have to find their way as it relates to funding to go to the Olympics and so on, or grant facility that's done like we do, grant facility for all sporting areas, since all focus is on sport for all. So while some countries may focus on athletics and medaling at the Olympics and so on, the Jump Rope Association gets funding, Scrabble gets funding, all fours get funding, ballroom dancing gets funding, and so on. We have at least 54 different sporting disciplines, and they each get their respect. And when they apply for support, we work with them to provide the necessary support to the best of our ability, whether they're going to medal at the All Fours International Championship or not, you know. So it's about providing that assistance and seeing sport for all and making the investment that way. Whilst for other countries, they may do it differently, but our structure is different, and we must also recognize that. Thank you.
I think Mr. Wilks wanted to make a comment here. Mr. Wilks?
Thank you. I thought Mrs. Blackwood, and she may still want to make a comment because she's in the ministry. But what I can tell you is that, first of all, in terms of funding, what was done in 1995 when the Sports Development Foundation was formed is that a decision was taken to use gaming, or if you prefer gambling activity, legitimate gambling, to take a special cess, if you want to call it that, but essentially it's a tax, and that was dedicated to the development of sports, and that was literally assigned to the Sports Development Foundation at the time. Over time, and in the early 2000s, what happened is that as the gaming industry expanded and the funding that was available was increased, another organization, a kind of umbrella organization, was formed called CHASE, an acronym CHASE, for which C is culture, H is health, A is arts, the S is sports, and the E is early childhood education. And that gaming fund was dedicated across the board with, in the case of sport, determination that 40% of that fund would be dedicated to sport, and the rest would go towards the other areas that I have mentioned. That is where it's at in terms of dedicated funding. The government still provides a level of support in the case of the ministry, and where that is concerned, I would probably hand over to Mrs. Blackwood for her to expand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilks. Mrs. Blackwood?
Thank you very much. And before I respond, I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate Trinidad and Tobago on this forum. And I'm very excited about some of the programs and projects that I've heard and which can be easily replicated in other regions, in other countries, including Jamaica, throughout the region. I just want to comment first on that, just a few things, just to say that girls' championship, athletics championship, started in Jamaica in 1941. So the myth of women and girls participating in sport should be out of the window, and I think is out of the window by now. Our first Olympic team in 1948 had more than one female on that team. And for those who are listening, Dr. Cynthia Thompson, who broke the Olympic record in the heats, she went on to be a pediatrician, and most of our athletes, many of them amateurs, not considered professional in terms of their total livelihood, through scholarships and other education program, have been, some have passed on, some are still with us, some of the greatest professionals in all fields, career fields and professional fields that, that exist. Just to say that very quickly, community development in Jamaica cannot be sustained without sport. And sport is important in terms of ensuring that there's viable and sustainable community development. The program that Denzil, Mr. Wilks, spoke about came into being in 1995 because it was recognized that there was inadequate budgetary support from the government and through its financing programs. And so to ensure that we continue with sport development and using sport for development is continued. That's one of the bases for the establishment of the Sport Development Foundation. The question of financing and budget, while if we were to do a serious impact study, we will see how critical sport is, but there are hardly any community development programs that do not involve sport. There's a Social Development Commission that uses sport to mobilize the communities, to discuss and to work on other areas. Sport is critical in education, and I'm sure that you would have heard about the various projects and programs that exist. We have utilized sport in the basic schools as a pre-primary school as a means of getting parents to come together, and especially from different political sides to come together, especially the fathers. They are usually very excited about the young ones. And so we have used that as a means to mobilize communities. We have used it in terms of peace building. It is officially used in the government, in the Ministry of National Security. Sport is used in, I think of the Sigma Run, which is has been in existence since 1999, as through the Sagicor Foundation. The Sigma Run will be the first, I think February 1st to 20th this year, because it's now in a hybrid fashion. Over the years, 1999 to 2020, the Sigma Run has raised over $500 million for community-based projects. And their target so far they have raised over $500,000 for the upcoming Sigma Run. And this involves all levels. It involves corporate sponsorship, corporate involvement. In 2020, we had over 200 companies participating. You have persons from the communities. You have, this year, there will be 3 levels, so that you will have community participation, virtual participation, and you have other areas. So sport for community development, the challenge that we have is that we have not adequately, we did some work in 2007, 2008. Mr. Wilks is fully aware of that. It is through the Sport Development Foundation that it was funded. It was commissioned out of the Office of the Prime Minister, where sports resided at the time, where we looked at the contribution of sport to employment and to GDP. And that is the basis, that's the only study we have still. And we have been discussing about expanding it, and that study showed us clearly the percentage in terms of contribution in employment, in terms of athletes and their contribution to Jamaica. I don't want to take up all your time, but just to say that while if we do the appropriate impact studies, we are likely to garner additional government and other funding. But without sport, there would be no serious community development as we see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackwood. Are there any more questions from our media? All right, so I don't see any more questions coming from our media personnel. At this point, I would like to come to an end to our media conference.
Antoinette,
Yes,
I'm
Minister?
seeing, I don't know if you have the same screen. I'm seeing a go poll, somebody go poll, and then I saw somebody Ryan's hand up.
All right, I'm not sure if they identify as media, but we can take the question. All right, Ryan?
Hi, sorry about that. This is Ryan Beach. I'm actually using my colleague's Zoom account because of technical issues on my end. Madam Minister, thanks for that. I kind of just ran in a little bit late because I had another interview, but I just wanted to ask if it wasn't asked already, the importance of, inter-regional ministries of sport working together, given that many of our communities across the Caribbean face similar challenges and will face similar challenges post-pandemic. I just wanted to get Minister Cudjoe's thoughts on the need for ministries, and I'm sorry again if this was asked already, but the need for ministries of sport across the Caribbean to work together and certainly in part.
Ryan, we have lost you.
There?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the importance of ministries of sport across the region, not only being interconnected, but working on various projects that would help common problems across communities across the region.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Yesterday's ministers panel, we looked at collaboration and we admitted that more collaboration can be done. I would have shared that in youth development, in tourism, we tend to partner more often and have a deeper level of collaboration in those areas based on my experience as Minister of Youth and Minister of Tourism. So in sport, we recognize and we acknowledge that we share some of this, some very similar problems or very similar challenges, and we can learn so much from each other. So Minister Grange was there yesterday along with Dr. Wheatley, and we spoke to this being the first platform of this kind. We intend to continue to do more meetings as we proceed. So we're looking at like quarterly meetings where we can, not just the ministers, but also the technocrats, for instance, the directors of sport from throughout the region. We can have a platform where we can share information on projects, on programs, and help to guide and provide that technical assistance to one another. And we can learn from each other's stories and experiences. So that was a major part of our discussion yesterday, and we intend to do so coming out of this forum, because we have many lessons to learn. We share the same problem as Ms. Blackwood would have spoken about a couple of minutes ago, of not having sufficient data to guide our policy development and to really direct our project implementation. So research is an area that we all have to focus on individually within our countries, because time after time you hear of these different sport development program, and so much is done towards developing sport, even tracking the athletes as they get older and their contribution to not just to the development of their sport, but in using sport for the development of their communities and so on. So we have significant work to do in our respective territories, and equally important, at the regional level, where we can have access to case studies. Let's say, for instance, we in Trinidad and Tobago want to look at what Jamaica is doing in school sports. I'm really fascinated by that, where the Ministry of Education here, which is responsible for sport at the school age level, because they have their own division of sport and so on, can learn from the Jamaica Ministry of Sport or Ministry of Education, whichever handles sport in schools, because that has been a major activity within the Caribbean that we're all fascinated by. And there are many stories and experiences that we would want to learn about. Babs, the Minister of Sport from Jamaica, yesterday told us about Jamaica House and how they utilize this initiative to get investors to come on board and private sector to come on board. And Ms. Blackwood today spoke about in 2020 where 200 companies came on board to support. We want those same kind of stories too. So learning about how other countries have gone about to achieve these accomplishments. And I think our regional platform following this conference can go a long way in helping us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I see Mr. Wilks has his hands up.
Yes, just very quickly, that question is so profound. In fact, I take the question almost as a proposal, and I heard the minister's response. I'm very encouraged. It's something that I would personally encourage, that collaborative approach. In fact, one of the things that we also need to do in Jamaica is to even get greater collaboration between the various ministries and agencies as far as sport is concerned, because fundamentally, sport is a driver of tourism, for example. It is sport that puts Jamaica on the map. And so we need to have programs which have us working with tourism, which is our main foreign exchange earner, so that we can get reinvestment to build that sport. So just that general idea, I really wanted to just encourage. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wilks. Mr. Allen. Mr. Dennis Allen. But just before you get yourself muted, I'm seeing Mrs. Blackwood. You wanted to add to the conversation? You're muted, Mrs. Blackwood.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just before we wrap up, I would like to probably, I know that the conversation must continue after this. This is just an initial, but I would just like to make some very concrete suggestions at this point, just to say that the framework for collaboration, just a few comments, the framework for collaboration already exists. The opportunities for collaboration just need to be further explored. And in many cases, collaboration is taking place, but it's taking place many times under the radar, I would say, especially at the non-government levels in terms of project development, sharing of information. And many times information is passed on informally, but there has been over the years or previously much more interaction than we are seeing now. I would just like to sort of make a statement before I go on, which should not be taken necessarily as an official comment on behalf of my ministry, but more so as a sport administrator and someone who has been working in this area for quite some time. Our greatest challenge is in believing in ourselves and valuing our creativity and the richness that we have in place. And all of that is then made further by, in many cases, misplaced competition. That, I believe, is part of the challenge that we have within the Caribbean, and even, as Denzil says, within our individual nation states. We have opportunities in terms of at different levels, legislative, regulatory policies, issues around sports integrity. We know that Trinidad, through a non-government organization, has led on the issue of safeguarding in sport outside of just within the region, and that there have been some special initiatives, and there are other countries within the region who have done work, who have included it in the sports safeguarding policies in their legislations as well. And that is just one area. We need to combine to come together to look at other issues in terms of sports integrity, to look at issues which, in terms of international crime, sports is one of the very attractive areas. It's happening, it's under the radar, and we need to acknowledge that, and we must work together as a region in terms of that. There are evidence more so in Europe, but we see evidence of trafficking in athletes. We don't know of cases that have been elevated to legislative and litigatory levels, but they are exploitation in some instances of our athletes that get scholarships and go overseas. We know that we have increased the number of scholarships given to our athletes locally, but many of our athletes in whatever, and I said athletes meaning all of the sporting disciplines, we need to protect our athletes, to provide mentors for them overseas. We see some of the challenges they have had. This has to be a regional activity and collaborating. We do not have the resources to do it individually, and because of also the number of athletes. So we have to come together. We have to look at how we look at health. There's a program in Jamaica called Save a Life, where we do testing, heart health testing among student athletes. And what we know is that just among 1,000 athletes, this is just one example at one time. This was in 2018-19, among 1,000 athletes and teachers who were tested in 5 schools. We found that there were 90 persons that needed to be checked. There were 5 teachers overall that had to go to the hospital just for further checks. This is the kind of information that we can share. Our students have been taught in terms of CPR. We have had that because of issues that we have had with athletes dying on the field, right? Not many, but it has happened. And so they are, and this program was initiated and led by a non-government organization that focused on that, working with other NGOs and other ministries, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Sport, Ministry of Health. So this shows that kind of collaboration. One other area quickly I want to mention is the issue of sports governance. We know that there are challenges in that area, but in addition to that, Hansel spoke about volunteerism. And so the importance of giving our sports administrators, the Jamaica Olympic Association has done work in that area. There's much more work to be done in giving our sport administrators the skills, the necessary skills, the information, the tools in which to be as effective as possible. We have seen collaboration with CONCACAF training, coaches in safeguarding issues. We have seen where ICC or CWI working in the region in terms of safeguarding training. So we have examples of work that has been done. And for that reason, I say that there are opportunities also to expand on those. There are some very innovative projects throughout the region, but if you are not directly in the field, you are not aware of them. And I think it's time we begin to have far more information sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackwood. Vanessa Cudjoe.
Right. Thank you very much. I want to piggyback a little on what Mrs. Blackwood said. There are a number of other areas for collaboration, and the issue of greater collaboration and the need for collaboration was actually raised by her own minister yesterday, Olivia Babsy-Grange, where we spoke about having a platform where ministers can meet once a quarter and so on. We also spoke to some areas which already exist for collaboration. I think anti-doping is something that we ought to take seriously, and standing up as a region, as a unit, because united we are a force, especially on the international platform, in creating policy and ensuring that our athletes are handled fairly as it relates to issues like anti-doping. We can, of course, do a better job in having regional leagues, even at school level, like they have been done by the Caribbean Teachers Union, but also right now TTFA and the Jamaican Football Association, even throughout the entire region. I think that we can have a regional professional type of league within the Caribbean, and we spoke to those things yesterday. So not just for football, the exchange of information and expertise. For instance, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have elite athletes at in a larger number of disciplines than some of our other Caribbean countries. And we mentioned people like Andrew Lewis, who is doing tremendous work with his sailing academy in Bethany Beach, teaching little boys from underprivileged communities to sail, rowing and dragon boats and all these different areas. So I think united we can be such a bigger force than we already are. And the information sharing, the networking, and the coming together can really help. We can learn lessons from regional integration initiatives like, let's say, the European Union, where there were exchanges among students and athletes and so on to help to foster that unity. And we've been speaking about regional integration for so long within the Caribbean, and I join Ms. Blackwood in saying, yes, although some collaboration exists, much more can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And for our final question, TT game plan. Mr. Allen, Dennis Allen from TT Game Plan. You can proceed with your question. Not sure if you're having some technical difficulties, but you can type your question.
Well, I think Mr. Allen seems to be having some technical difficulties there. Dennis, if you have that question, you can send it offline and we'll make sure that we can send you an answer maybe a little later on or after the conference. Yeah, so at this point in time, we'd like to take any closing statements from our generous speakers. We can start with Honourable Minister.
Can you repeat, please, Kevin?
Sure.
I'm having some technical difficulty.
That's okay. We're just wrapping up, Honourable Minister. So just closing statements from all of our speakers, yourself, Ms. Blackwood, and Mr. Wilks. Yeah. So actually, Minister, if you don't mind, I will leave you for last. Mr. Wilks, if you don't mind, just any closing statements you have to add here.
Thank you very much. I am so enamored with what is taking place and all of this. I want to, again, as I said when I spoke earlier, commend those who have initiated this. As long as I'm around, I would like to be a part of it. There are so many ideas you hear coming out and that you have had over time. And I think we are on the right track in what we are doing here. I would like to see the concrete things coming out, the plans for further meetings so that we can develop the ideas in all the areas, because we mustn't just get excited about it and then forget about it. We must go forward with strength. But commendations, and please let us forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Blackwood. Oh, if you can find the...
Yes, I'm muted. I'm unmuted now, right. Just again to say thank you so much for the opportunity. I look forward to making my contribution going forward. And just to say that we have a real rich history in sport, as Minister Grange said yesterday, in terms of sport and its contribution to nation building. COVID-19 has provided, despite the challenges, has also provided us with new opportunities, especially in the area of technological advancement. And I think that there is no going back. We see where we have always in the Caribbean had challenges with air transport, the cost of transport, and therefore many times we tend to interact more with North America because many times it's less expensive in terms of traveling to those areas. Now we see the importance and the impact of using the technology through virtual means in terms of events and that area. And so there's so much to do. And I think that there are very specific ways in terms of replicating, in terms of expansion of what we have, and also of starting new projects. For those who seem a little bit intimidated in terms of cost and resource mobilization, the resources are here. The expertise, which is usually what is critical, the technical expertise we have in the region, and we have some of the best in the world. And this is why I said that if we believe in ourselves and stop undervaluing much of what we have, you'll be surprised how much we remain at the top as a sporting region. And now in terms of, for not just for performance sport and competitive sport, but in terms of sport for community development and nation building. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I firstly want to thank the other members of the panel. I want to thank Mr. Wilks and Mrs. Blackwood for joining me on this panel, and the government of Jamaica, Minister Olivia Grange, for really taking the time out to be here. I know at first we had a little struggle in getting her on board, but I'm happy that that Jamaica have come on board full team like Jamaicans usually roll out. So we are really excited and happy about your contribution that you've made yesterday, that you're making today, and that we will continue to make following this little platform. We in the Caribbean, we do very well at coming up with policies and strategies and doing the theoretical part of the work and doing the talking too. For me, it's about looking ahead, looking forward, working together, strengthening our collaborative spirit and effort, and most of all, putting all that we have talked about into action. Much of this doesn't cost too much money for us to get together and talk. And just like Ms. Blackwood said, COVID brought tremendous challenges, but I think it has also brought countless opportunity. And now without a plane ticket, a flight, or even a phone call, I can say, I've met Ms. Blackwood, I've met Mr. Wilks. We've shared experiences and we've spoken about greater and stronger collaboration. This is a major start. I've been Minister of Sport for this is my 4th year. This level of conversation haven't been able to take place. We probably would have been waiting on some kind of physical conference to meet and to talk, but here we are utilizing the internet, all based on what COVID has brought to us. So we must embrace that. So I look forward to collaborating and working together and doing all that we possibly can to strengthen and improve sport development in our nations. The members of the media, thank you for being here. Thank you for asking your questions, and feel free to communicate with our communication staff if you have more questions or you want to know more. So thanks to the entire panel. Thank you to the media. Thank you to our chairpersons. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
I just want to reiterate the thank yous. So I want to thank Minister Cudjoe, Mrs. Blackwood, and Mr. Wilks. Thank you so much for being part of this panel and the contribution. I'm sure it was very much edifying. And thank you once again to our media personnel for being here. And Kevin, I want to hand it back over to you.
All right. All right.